Roots of the Revolution. So this is the slides that go along with the reading in your textbook, pages 122 to 124, Roots of Revolution. So vocab, absolute monarch. So this is one that you should know back from when we did governments. An absolute monarch is a monarchy where the king or queen has all of the power, compared to a modern monarchy or a constitutional monarchy where they share the power. Opening question. So take a minute, write this in your notebook, just as you would if I was talking up at the front of the class. What are some of the reasons people might choose to revolt against their government? Take a minute to answer that question in your notebook. Our objectives. So identify the main ideas of the French Revolution, explain the French reaction to the Glorious Revolution in England, and describe the effects of the American Revolution on France. So again, you'll have these in your notebook, so you can refer back to them at any time. What were the main ideas of the French Enlightenment? So we're talking specifically the French Enlightenment, so this should be pulling from the Enlightenment in France text reading that you did. All people are born equal and free. They believed in limited government that would respect individual rights, religious tolerance, and freedom of the press and speech. And try to guess who this is. Write it in your notebook if you have a guess. How did the French government respond to these ideas? So you have these ideas of everyone being equal and free coming through. How would the government respond? Remember, they're in an absolute monarchy right now. The king has all of the power. The French government started to censor Enlightenment writings, fearing it would bring a great change to their society. So again, they're in power. They don't want people thinking, oh, I'm free. Why do I have to listen to a king? And so they tried to censor them. Voltaire's writings, if you remember back to that lesson from our Enlightenment, Bastille, they censored their writings. They controlled who that information getting out and who could see that information and who couldn't. So you can see some of those elements that we've already talked about from the Enlightenment being pulled into being this foundation of this revolution that's going to occur. What did the French think of England's Glorious Revolution? So the monarch or the government and the aristocrats saw it as a threat to their power. So again, they're seeing this revolution where the king in England is giving up some of his power. If you're in the monarch or the government or you're part of the wealthy aristocrats, you don't want to see that because that's going to threaten your power and your status. The French people liked the idea of a limited monarchy versus an absolute monarchy. So the people, the citizens of France, liked this idea because it gave them some of the power back instead of having all of the power vested in one person. Explain why France backed the American Revolution. So this is kind of like ironies of ironies. If you think about it, the French king backs the American Revolution to overthrow the English king. So it's not surprising that those ideas to revolt against the king come to France. France backed the Americans to strike a blow to their rival England. So the French king didn't see this as the people revolting against the king, I probably shouldn't support that. They saw it as, I'm going to take out my rival, which is England. I'm going to weaken them. They're going to lose their colonies, and maybe I can take their colonies. That was kind of the thing. We see this kind of idea again in the War of 1812, where they hope that the weakened newly formed United States loses against Britain again, and then they can come in and swoop in and take up some of the land. And we see this kind of idea also happening during the Civil War, where they're hoping originally the Confederates win because that would break up the country, and then these strong powers could come back in and take that land. So it's all about being able to beat their rival, and then of course trying to be able to gain more land, the colonialism and imperialism that we see. It was definitely not out of sympathy. They weren't sympathetic to the cause, at least from a governmental perspective. The French military and naval aid was essential to American success. So without the French aid from military and the Navy, the colonies would not have won. They were losing badly. People were starting to get discouraged, and then comes in the French, and they help support, and that helps shift the views of people in England of no longer this is worth it, and we're wasting money, and this is going on way longer than we thought, so maybe we should end it. And so that kind of plays into how the colonies end up winning. What was the outcome of supporting the Americans? So what was this outcome? What was the consequences of France supporting the Americans? The French aristocracy such as Lafayette learned to respect the American revolutionaries and their ideas. So Lafayette plays an important role. He's an important military figure. He's a very good military strategist. He comes up with a lot of strategies that end up helping the Americans win in battles. And he starts picking up these ideas of revolting against the king, of the people having a say. And he really takes to those Enlightenment ideas and those American revolutionary ideas from that, which then he takes back to France. Helping the Americans was very expensive and led to a financial crisis in France. So just as the American Revolution led to a financial crisis in England, it also led to one in France because it is expensive. War is expensive. It costs lots of money. I think you can Google the amount of money that the United States has spent in Afghanistan or Iraq, and it's in the trillions. So with helping the Americans, it also led to a financial crisis in France. And when financial crisis happened, people look for somebody to blame. And who do you think they were going to blame? In your closing question, right? Make sure you write this down with your notes in your notebook. In your own words, how did helping the Americans in the Revolutionary War move France closer to its own revolution? So based on your reading and based on the slides, in your own words, how would you describe how France helping Americans with the Revolutionary War to revolt against the English king move France closer to its own revolution? And there's a few things you should talk about in here, so make sure you look back and reference a couple of the things that we've already looked at. So that's lesson 1 of French Revolution. Make sure that you've done the reading, and make sure you do the next reading, which will be posted in Google Classroom.